Fast Boys and Pretty Girls is Danielle's story and begins with Danielle as a mother of four living back in her hometown in her childhood home. And she is a more or less failed model who, was promised great success in New York and kind of never found it. And she's a little bit of a failed romance. She's had a lot of things that didn't work out that she was truly hoping were going to work out at a young age, kind of put all of her eggs in one or two baskets, as we tend to do at any time in our life, but especially when we're early 20s, late teens. And her daughters come across a body behind the house. Wade, they live the top of a hill and it's a ravine. And as soon as they tell her that they've found bones back there, she knows, or she thinks she knows who it could be. And it sort of unleashes her memory of this very tumultuous, exciting, but also traumatizing period of her life when she was discovered, as they say, to become a model and moved to New York, and then her back and forth between her city mouse, country mouse, New York life, and hometown, and all that happened and became unraveled during that period of time. So Benji is your fast boy, and he's having grown up in Georgia, and I'm sure Benji's not very different no matter what region Benji's in, but there's a certain type of guy who's very devil may care, kind of apathetic, good time Charlie in a way, but with a darker edge, and just somebody who's along for the ride. And Danielle falls hopelessly in love with this kind of, loser, let's be honest. I'm sure that he might have had some redeeming qualities had he gotten older. And he dies in a motorcycle accident, kind of. We know this in the beginning. And so Katie Benson is a local detective who had also been living in New York at the time that Danielle was there, struggling with her modeling career. And Danielle's family, especially her mother, really wanted Danielle to have a connection with Katie Benson because she was kind of this hometown hero who had moved up to New York and was a detective. And I think that Katie, being the detective who is called to analyze the bones behind the house for present day Danielle, is another, unleashing of all of that shame and regret and the things that Danielle is living with. They all revolve around Benji, and he was more of a symptom rather than an illness of just what was going on with Danielle. And we come to discover during the book that Danielle still kind of cowers when she sees Katie Benson and feels that, she knows what really happened. She knows the true Danielle, and Danielle's never really grown up or away from what happened to her when she was a very young woman or a very grown child. It kind of depends on which way you look at it. But, and how these events in your life can affect the rest of your life, especially if you're not able to graduate from them. I find the most success writing in first person because I more or less like to pretend that I am the character. And so the experiences as they're having them, I mean, occasionally I'll add a little bit of seasoning of like looking back on something, but I really like to be them at the time. And I think that can be frustrating as it's meant to be, because being a 19-year-old girl who's hopelessly in love with a, motorcycle riding druggie, is frustrating. It is a frustrating experience. It's often a frustrating time in a person's life. And Danny is from a very small town, kind of controlling mother who means well, fighting against all of these barriers that she sees in her life. And so I try to encapsulate the frustration of a moment while, adding a little bit of the wisdom that can come later. But in this case, it's less wisdom and more regret. And a lot of times, you get one or the other and not both, unfortunately. We go to the fair up in Jasper, Georgia. And I just, there are all these real strong characters that are around, and Deb, the mom, I love watching mother-children relationships, and she thinks she's such a big shot, and then Danielle kind of like, well, this is all very small time and silly to me. And so she kind of puts her in her place, and it was like fun to see Deb's world, which was this big, became huge, and she was still in the little one. So I enjoyed that. And then Benji, um, those guys are everywhere. But I could just see, by the crotch rockets and pulling over at a gas station. There's the group of kids trying to pimp out a Jeep, or, they can't they're using lawnmower parts to get a bike going again. And just that sort of freedom of, um, well, not thinking that anyone is judging you, and that, there isn't as much of a lens because you're living out in the country. And I don't know. I enjoyed the freedom that I think that people who live in those environments experience, and then put that against something like New York, where it's a totally different type of freedom. It's like the freedom of anonymity. And with people just kind of do their own thing there. But Danielle felt much more judged in New York. I've seen lots of Debs. I've seen lots of Benjis. I've known a lot of Benjis. I've probably known some Debs too. In those homes where it's all daughters and then this kind of reluctant dad, like, oh, I love that dynamic. And so I have a lot of fun. You're right. I do have a lot of fun with my supporting cast. Danielle's sister, who's kind of a stick in the mud and, very different from her. She was fun to write.